Russia failed to carry out a planned launch of its Rs-24 Yars intercontinental ballistic missile overnight on May 19th, despite earlier warnings from Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate, Defense Express reported. According to the outlet, had the launch taken place from Sverdlovsk Oblast, locals would likely have witnessed the missile's flight. Photos and videos would have quickly appeared online. The missile's trajectory would have been visible across vast swaths of Siberia and the Russian Far East, from Khanty-Mansisk to Magadan. But no such footage emerged. Defense Express concluded the launch likely didn't happen, suggesting something went wrong. The reason for the aborted test remains unclear. Analysts speculate it may be linked to two failed Rs-24 launches in 2023, both of which veered off course. Since every missile undergoes a pre-launch check, the Kremlin may have opted to cancel the launch to avoid showcasing weaknesses in its nuclear deterrent, particularly with talks looming between Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump. Another possibility, according to Defense Express, is a malfunction in the early stage of flight immediately after liftoff. While the Yars system is a modernized version of the Topol missile, failures remain a technical risk. Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation at Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, also recalled that Russia suffered another failed launch of the Oreshnik intercontinental missile in 2024. That second attempt followed closely after its initial November 2024 test and also ended in failure. On May 18th, Ukraine's HUR intelligence agency said Russia was preparing a combat training launch of an Rs-24 Yars missile overnight on May 19th. The goal, according to HUR, was to intimidate Ukraine, as well as NATO and European Union countries. The missile was reportedly to be launched from Sverdlovsk Oblast, home to the 433rd Regiment of Russia's 42nd Division under the 31st Rocket Army. Defense Express noted that the location was highly unusual. Yars missiles are typically tested at the Plesetsk Cosmodrome. What happened and what were the reasons for the failed launch? Military expert and former SBU officer Ivan Stupak explained on Radio NV why the missile was never launched. We do not have data indicating that the missile exploded somewhere or that there was an emergency launch. We proceed from the fact that the launch was canceled. Possibly technical, possibly political, we do not know. I think that over time, a little more light will be shed on this story. Maybe they postponed it due to some circumstances. But in any case, the Yars missile and the general rattling with this missile now, I associate more with... I link it to Oreshnik. They rattled with Oreshnik, they liked it very much. Yes, its effectiveness was minimal, but it worked in the media. First. Second, they managed to scare a certain number of Europeans. They got a little scared. They tested this missile in combat. Third. Therefore, perhaps a similar story with Yars. Again, to scare. Again, to test its combat effectiveness. To then, perhaps, sell it somewhere around the world. Or just to threaten with this missile. So far, it is exclusively a mock-up. Yes, they drive it back and forth across Red Square. But does it fly or work at all? No one knows. Russian blogger reporter Filatov on how Russian generals and the military-industrial complex cannot understand FPVs and the small drone warfare revolution. About FPV and that the world will never be the same. There is a stereotype among the technical intelligentsia. Allegedly, some high-ranking generals consider FPV a temporary problem, that the regulations are not outdated and are quite consistent with the realities of the modern battlefield. And in the near future, the problems with FPV will be solved by themselves. And then we can return to the good old tactics with flanking envelopments, motorized columns, strikes in converging directions, and so on. We must understand that technical progress today is driven not only by the mega corporations of the military-industrial complex, which are inventing something serious, but also by the small civilian sector. What is this digression about? And about the fact that civilian electronics can carry so much computing power with relatively low energy consumption that if you write target recognition and holding systems, you can rivet as many of these systems in the garage as you like. And a shell from an RPG or flamethrower attached to a civilian FPV is equal in power to the same ATGM, only much more maneuverable. The enemy has realized this and is rapidly developing this direction. Now 5 FPV crews, with properly selected equipment, will be much more effective than 3 to 5 120mm mortars, and calculating the actions of a motorized column for a throw through some terrain, as with density of artillery fire, is inappropriate and deadly for a column of armored vehicles. We all love drawings on the map, when some inhabitant is surrounded by arrows from 2 directions and seems to be trying to close the ring. On paper, everything is clear, but why have we not seen this circle close since the beginning of the special military operation? Maybe because the infantry laid these pincers with their bodies, and the logistics in these pincers are knocked out by the transparency of the front. That is, when the logistics are visible and FPV paralyzes the rapid coverage. We begin to suffer unjustified losses, since the academics did not see the threat in these annoying flies. It is high time for the gentlemen generals to understand that the development of microelectronics is not only the iPhone coveted by his mistress, but this is the microelectronics that can and should be used in the wars of the future. There will be no technological rollback to the second half of the 20th century or to the end of the 20th century, when today's elders fought briskly in Afghanistan and in the Chechen campaigns. Now we must very actively invest in military IT, and not only the monsters of the military-industrial complex, where you yourself can realize your desires, but also in civil society to encourage developments, since now is the time for non-standard solutions. And here, military censorship plays its negative role, with its dumb journalism when, "Why are you dragging Ukrainian content into our little world?" As a result, military-industrial complex workers living far from the LBS, not seeing Ukrainian content, cannot clearly understand what is wanted from them. Even if representatives of some factories come to the battle zone, they do not see the battle itself. They do not imagine the angle of attack. They do not imagine the mechanics of modern combat, but receive feedback from someone who managed to open up enemy firing points with infantry and then cover them with mass, but not skill. Which of the generals will break the stereotype that a general is not only the one who shouts the loudest into the radio, but also the one who can think outside the box? The country needs him more than the rest of the parquet army. Russian planes are falling apart mid-flight, with a MiG-29 from an aerobatic team losing its external fuel tank over Chelyabinsk this morning. Tank later found in a forest. Russian military supply route, with destroyed logistics vehicles scattered every few meters along the road. Ukrainian drones have become a nightmare for Russian supply routes. From cheap FPV drones to long-range strike UAVs, they hunt convoys, fuel trucks, and ammo transports with deadly precision. Roads once considered safe are now ambush zones in the sky. Drones operate day and night, often beyond the reach of Russian air defenses, making it nearly impossible to move supplies without risk. Every strike delays logistics, creates bottlenecks, and forces Russia to reroute or limit movement. In this war, drones aren't just eyes. They're scalpel-sharp weapons cutting through Russia's lifeline. And with Ukraine scaling up drone production, the threat is only growing. For every truck destroyed, it's not just a loss of cargo. It's a strike at Russia's ability to keep fighting. As part of a new military aid package, Belgium will transfer a modernized Leopard 1 tank, for which the Luch Design Bureau has developed an anti-tank missile. The transferred Leopard 1 tank will be equipped with a new Cockerel 3105 turret with a 105mm gun, for which the Phalaric guided anti-tank missile was created. The tank will be tested in combat conditions, and if the results are successful, the possibility of modernizing other Leopard 1 tanks in the armed forces of Ukraine will be considered. The modernization mainly involves the new Cockerel 3105 turret, which features advanced optical systems and an autoloader for 12 to 16 rounds located in the bustle compartment. The layout is designed so that the gunner and commander are positioned at the level of the tank's hull, rather than inside the turret itself. Meanwhile, the turret is equipped with a high-pressure 105mm gun that uses the same ammunition as Leopard 1 tanks, but also has the capability to fire the Ukrainian Falaric anti-tank guided missile. This missile was specifically developed for the Belgian 105mm 105 horsepower gun back in 2010 for the then-current CTCV turret family, equipped with the same gun. The missile uses laser beam riding guidance. The development of the Falaric anti-tank guided missile took place in 2008 to 2009. In February 2010, the missile successfully passed live fire tests in Scotland. 2 missiles launched from the gun barrel of a CTCV turret mounted on a Piranha 3 armored personnel carrier hit targets at a range of over 2,900 meters. The Falaric missile can hit targets at a maximum range of 5 kilometers in 17 seconds. After launch, its tandem warhead, high-explosive anti-tank, is capable of penetrating 550 millimeters of steel armor protected by explosive reactive armor. It's worth noting that turrets manufactured by Cockerill are positioned as a universal solution for upgrading outdated military equipment, both tracked and wheeled, that requires enhanced firepower and modern optical systems. In addition to Leopard 1, these turrets are also installed on Indian Zorawar light tanks, Turkish Kaplan MT tanks, and other platforms. Militarny previously reported that the Belgian Minister of Defense had partially revealed the plans for military aid in 2025. In particular, it was announced that Belgium would provide Ukraine with 20 Cerber air defense systems. Out of the €1 billion allocated by Belgium to support Ukraine in 2025, nearly €650 million is earmarked for purchases from Belgian companies.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week at 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.